People are afraid of dying because they haven't done what they wanted to do their whole life.
The only kind of thing I remember was my granddad always used to say, if I would die tomorrow, I would be okay with that, and I'd be really happy with my life. Like, if you think about your life, do you think death is a sad thing, or do you think it's something that should be celebrated? Have you ever had a profound experience in your life that's made you sort of like, I suppose like a near-death experience, but like an experience that where you kind of were in a position where you sort of had a bit more of an understanding towards death?
Hey people, welcome back to Triangle Theory, and today we chose a topic that is a bit more philosophical, and it's what happens after we die, and is there life after death? We're going to touch on why did we choose this topic, life after death in different religions, near-death experiences, simulation theory, and DMT.
I think, yeah, don't worry, it's not going to be too much of a morbid conversation. I think, to be honest, another reason why I thought this would be a good podcast is just to kind of have a bit more of a healthier relationship when it comes to talking about death. I think everyone's kind of not as open to talking about it. Yeah, I feel like it's quite a valid one, and one that, for me, I've always seen a bit more sort of try to view it from a different perspective of not so much thinking about the downsides of it, but more sort of trying to understand it in a way that is a part of the human experience and something that is inherently going to happen to all of us one day. So why do we choose a topic, comrade?
So I believe is a very exciting topic because as humans, I think we are the only one. Yeah, we are the only one species that we know we're going to die. As far as I'm aware, we know that it's going to happen eventually, and I think it's curiosity. It's very discomfortable topic to talk about, I guess, as well, because you know that it's going to happen, but you never know when it's going to happen. And so I think it's a fascinating topic at the same time because it feels very mystical in a way.
What's your relationship like with death?
So I don't think I'm afraid of death. I feel like as long as you're doing what you want to do, you shouldn't really focus on that too much, because I feel like people are afraid of dying because they haven't done what they wanted to do their whole lives. And absolutely, there are things that I still want to achieve, and there are things that I haven't achieved yet, and I have goals and aspirations, and I don't want to die. But if that would be a thing, if there would be a situation where I'm ill, God forbid, I'm ill, or something happens that I have to die, like I guess I would accept it, and it is what it is. Actually, it would be really sad because I don't want people around me to suffer. That would be a really sad day for them, I guess. I think.
Yeah,
really sad.
I think what another question I want to ask you is what was your sort of relationship of death like growing up? Was it something that you used to talk about sort of in the family? Is it something that it wasn't really sort of sort of told upon? Because it was the same for me. Like the only kind of thing I remember was my granddad always used to say, if I would die tomorrow, I would be okay with that, and I'd be really happy with my life. And he always used to say that. And he always used to say, because I used to live I've lived a very full life. And if anyone knew my granddad, they probably say he would. He was the kind of guy that was very sort of went for it, took kind of life by the balls a bit. And that had a huge impact on me, because every time he said that, it kind of made me sort of realize that time is essentially, there is a time limit, and you've really got to live it, and you've really got to make the most of what you have and who you spend it with, and try and live a life that you want to live. And I think there's like a sense of urgency with that, but I feel that it also wanted me to kind of celebrate death in a way that, if I was to think about sort of my own funeral and how I would want people to remember me by, I wouldn't want it to be something that people would sort of mourn over and cry. I think, yes, there would be emotion in it, and I would feel really sorry, and you know, but I wouldn't want people to feel sad about it. I want it to be a celebration of my life, and like a celebration about me as a person, and that I was this kind of person. I think that that's how I would like my sort of ceremony. It would be sort of people laughing and dancing and enjoying, and sort of being like, wow, yeah, he was a part of my life, and I was grateful for that experience. I wouldn't, like, when I went to my grandmother's funeral, it was really quite like, it was in like a I'm not saying this is bad, but she chose to sort of have the ceremony in a church, and it just felt very sort of quite morbid, and just everyone was wearing black, and it just felt like this kind of, I don't know, quite, oh my God, I don't want to end up in that fucking box. But I always tried to feel it, that it's a case where, who's to say that she's not in a better place, and she's kind of around and with us, and she's within me. And I tried to, in my own head at that time, at that funeral, try to think about all the times that I would remember her and celebrate everything that she did. And it was also the same for when my other grandmother died, and I was, me and Charlie and my two cousins got to carry in the coffin, and I was so honoured to do that. And I sort of had my sort of saying where I was like, sort of looked at everyone within the funeral and looked at all my relatives and was thinking, wow, all of that's just has come out of this one woman, and I'm so grateful that she birthed all of that. And that's an amazing experience. And I don't know, I think that... Hey guys, thank you so much for making it this far into the podcast. If you have any feedback, then please let us know, as we always want to make this podcast better. So hearing from you is always a pleasure. Please subscribe to all of our platforms, get involved at Triangle Theory. If you've got any comments, or if you want to share any topics that you think that me and Conrad would like to talk about, then please get involved. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. We have a kind of a strange taboo relationship with death, kind of like we do with sex in a way, where it's kind of not really spoken about, but such an important fundamental part. I'm a huge fan of Aubrey Marcus, and I'm a huge fan of the content that he puts out, and he quite regularly talks to the guy called Matthias De Stefano, and supposedly he is someone that has recollection, or has can see his past lives. And
sorry, could you repeat that one time?
So Matthias De Stefano is someone that can recall his past life.
Okay.
So and he talks about it, and some could say that that's bullshit and that's woke, and it's your choice whether to believe it. But there's something about him where I believe it.
Why do you believe him?
Because I think it just aligns with my own kind of beliefs in terms of what happens before and after you die.
So how does he remember that?
So he kind of thinks of himself as like a memory cell that allows him to, and I'm not going to do a very good way of explaining it, but if you want to find out more, then search Matthias De Stefano talking to Aubrey Marcus and sort of how that came about. And I just thought it was a very interesting perspective on sort of how he looks at things in terms of time and how it's a linear thing. But the way he sort of describes it is, you know, death is sort of welcome to life. It's your pathway to death. It's almost like you want to get back to that place of the afterlife in a way. And I just thought that was a really interesting way to look at death, and kind of made me feel a bit more sort of comfortable with the idea that it's okay to die. Obviously, I think that I'm more fearful of like the pain that comes with it, the people that I would leave behind.
That's it. Well, that's the same way I'm thinking. I don't think I would really. I think I would accept that quite. I think I would accept that in a positive way, but I don't think my family would do it the same way that I would do, and my friends as well. So Yeah, that would be the hardest part.
Yeah. What fact did you find most interesting about like death? Like if I was to sort of describe it as when you're talking about life after death, what is it that interests you most about this topic?
Well, I feel like that's when in the previous episodes when we were talking about different theories, and I asked you, what would you like to, if you could know the absolute truth of something, what would you ask? So I think life after death would be one of those questions that, because no one knows. You again, the guy that you saw on the podcast, yeah, maybe he knows, but where is the evidence? He's the only one person who knows. Like, it can't be that way, right? So it's something that you have no idea what's going to happen. Is it going to feel like you're sleeping? Is it going to feel just pitch black and it feels like you don't feel anything, right? You just you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, so that's the same way, but you just don't wake up. Or is it going to feel like I remember I was speaking with Charlie, and he said, talking about simulation theory, he said, imagine if all of this is simulation, and at the end, like when you die, they take a helmet from the top of your head and they say, how was it? And then you realize that all of this was just a game or whatever. That, I remember, that blew my mind, because at the same time I remembered, have you seen Matrix?
Yeah, I love that
And
movie.
the first movie, the first part that came out, there was this part where Neo woke up in this bath, and he realized that they are connected to all of these cables, and this AI were flying around, and he realized that all of this was just imagination. And I remember when I saw that one, I was like, no fucking way, because that completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
I think that movie is so good.
It's kind of like what's happening now, right? Like if you look at AI and you're sort of asking AI if it's in awareness of itself, which it is. So therefore it knows it's in a simulation, that it's what it's experiencing is not fundamentally real. We're already creating that, or on the touch points of creating that. So who's to say that we aren't in that? Which I find fascinating. Who's to say that we're not an advanced race? Civilization has created a simulation so real. Like if you look at a game and how real it is.
That's another thing I wanted to touch.
Yeah.
When you look at Engine 5, it's like you're watching a movie, and it's literally a beginning of it.
Yeah.
So think about 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, what's going to happen. It's crazy. Like you just can't even imagine how real it's going to become. And as you said, with all the AI and virtual reality, it's just getting fascinating but scary at the same time, because then you start to realize, well, maybe all of this is just an illusion, man.
What is it about you that scares you if this was all an illusion? Would it make you feel insignificant? Would it make you feel like your life has no meaning?
Yeah, definitely. Like,
why?
I would feel like that someone has
kind of robbed you of that in a way.
Yeah, I would feel very I would feel used, which is so selfish in a way, right? The thing, because okay, when you go back and you think, if there's God who created everything, well, he is kind of the creator of the simulation, right? So he kind of uses us for whatever reasons he uses. But then I think when we think about simulation, we think that some guy created a game, and all of us is just part of that game. So yeah, I would feel a bit used, and I wouldn't feel like there's a meaning behind it, because I'm just a part of a game. But even though if it's not a game, if it's just, yeah, I don't know, man. It's such a
no, it's interesting.
deep topic, man.
Like when I think about sort of
how would you feel?
What if I realized that this was all a
Yeah.
simulation?
Would you feel as ambitious as you are right now, or would you feel like
I would
fuck
just
that?
question the purpose a bit. Sort of a question: what's the what's the purpose of this experience if we're sort of, unless it's like some kind of experiment, or
Exactly.
something like that. But if I was to wake up and realize it was a simulation, I don't know, unless it's some kind of like state of control, there'd have to be some kind of like higher sense of thought behind if there was a simulation. And I think it would just self doubt the sort of experience that we're having now in terms of like what we believe the purpose to be, the human evolution experience to be. It would just be like kind of that bit would be taken away.
Do you
I don't
think you
know.
would take more risks?
What if it was just, if I knew that I was going to wake up in another game?
Not necessarily. Like you don't know what's going to happen after you die, but you know that you live in simulation.
Not necessarily I would take more risks because I still feel the emotional parameters of what this
Yeah.
life feels like, and it still feels very real either way. Like it feels like this is an experience and this is what it feels like. So I don't think it would change the way in which I don't know if it would change the way in which I feel about myself in a way, but I think it would be more about sort of fundamentally trying to understand why in which we're here. Like those are the kinds of things where I would just be like, well, if that has no meaning, then what the fuck. So the simulation theory always really interests me.
You know what? Like it really interests because it really interests me because when you look at the people such as Elon Musk, and they are the smartest people on this planet, and they talk about there is a huge possibility that we live in simulation, then you start to question it. Like they know so much more than we do, and if they thinking that is a huge possibility that, like, sometimes it feels like that life is just a bit too perfect. Everything is just, it has a signature to it. Like if you look at the flowers and the animals and humans, and everything comes from like when you think about maths, it's not that people invented mathematics.
Yeah.
It was just there. We just discovered it.
Yeah.
So it was before that.
Yeah.
It's not like we invented it.
Well, there's so much like synergy within everything.
Exactly.
Like everything's so interconnected. Like if you look at the way in which a tree looks in comparison to
That's
a
what I'm
lung,
saying, yeah.
or when you've got polarities of like between things, and you start looking at sort of patterns in life and patterns in mathematics, you sort of start to think maybe things are tuned to a certain,
There's a pattern.
yeah. And I don't know if that's necessarily because I always, whenever I look at these kind of subjects and try to understand meanings of dimensions and stuff, there's people like Nikola Tesla, where it's like if you want to try and understand the universe, always think in terms of vibrations and frequencies. And I think maybe that we are just, and to this point, I haven't had like a sort of out of body experience where I've sort of used medicines that much. Like I've dabbled in shrooms and I've dabbled in DMT, but I've not had like an ayahuasca experience that I know that's something that I really want to do. Because I think what that does is it kind of changes your vibrational state to be able to experience things that aren't necessarily so much in a physical realm, but maybe potentially in a more spiritual realm per se. But where I think about sort of vibrations and frequencies that make up this inherent universe, you start thinking, well, maybe things are just fine tunes to patterns,
Yeah.
and maybe that is sort of like decoding things.
Have you ever seen there was a picture of human soul in a brain, and then how the universe looks like from, like, if you zoom in out,
Yeah.
and it looks literally like completely the same.
Yeah.
There's a theory as well that we just live in someone else's one soul.
For sure.
And there's trillions and quadrillions of these souls and
That is
different worlds,
it's totally the possibility. And I think that as well as space exploration, I think there's far more to uncover and decode within ourselves that will allow us to understand the outer realms of
Yeah.
the universe.
Yeah.
Whether or not people think that's absolutely crazy and a crazy hypothesis, I don't know.
No one knows.
No one
That's
knows.
the
At the end
thing.
of the
Like,
day, it's down to free thought. You can
no
think
one
whatever you
knows.
want.
No one
You know,
knows.
your opinion will be different to mine, and that's okay. I'm not trying to impose that my theory is any sort of more stronger than yours. Like maybe there is a purgatory where you get told whether or not that you're going to heaven or hell, or
Yeah.
maybe there is some, whatever it might be. But I know you did some kind of sort of research into different
Religions.
yeah.
So I just picked three the most famous and the biggest religions in the world. So Christianity, Islam, and Hindu. So Christians, obviously, the main source of Christianity is the Bible, and there's a saying that I'm the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies. So they kind of talk about life after death, that you go straight to the heaven. Everyone is very familiar with living in the heaven with Jesus and the angels. And ancient Hindu scriptures refer to the Atman, soul. Atman means soul, being reborn many times, so reincarnation. And Bhagavad Gita, from Smitry text, say, as a person casts off worn out clothes and puts on new ones, so does the Atman cast off worn out bodies and enter new ones. So that's example of reincarnation. And I'm gonna ask the question after that one. And Islam teaches that there is life after death. This is known as Akira. In Islam, it is Allah who decides when a person dies. Most Muslims believe that when they die, they will stay in their graves until Yawm al-Din, the day of judgment. On that day, they will be raised from their graves and brought before Allah and judge on how they lived their earthly lives. This belief is known as the resurrection of the body. And those who perform more good deeds than bad will enter Yana, paradise. Yana is a place described as a garden of everlasting bliss and a home of peace. So it's funny because it's not funny. It's interesting because all of these religions talks about that there is something after you live this earthly life. And my question was, would you think out of these three, which one resonates with you the most, and why?
I think that there's always a possibility for. I mean, there's a possibility for all of them, and I think there's some kind of relation to all of them, and I think they all. Excuse me.
They're very similar, all of them.
Yeah,
I mean,
in ways.
maybe Hindu and Buddhism are quite similar, different from Islam and Christianity, because it says that you live, your soul lives the life until you reach the enlightenment, and essentially, and when you reach the enlightenment, you don't need to go through the suffering anymore, because they believe that life is a suffering and trying to become enlightened. Whereas Christianity and Islam, you after you die, you don't go back to life. You live in the heaven, or Yana, and the paradise. And depending on what you did in this life.
Yeah, it's and I think without sort of giving my own personal opinion too much, it's fundamentally, I think the human experience is sort of to believe in something allows you to understand more about yourself and what it is that this life is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think humans need something to believe in fundamentally, whether that's, I think we're sort of designed in a way to try and understand what this is and what it means. It's the very questions in which we always try and ask ourselves. Because I think it sort of helps us try and to understand more about life.
Mm-hmm.
I think whether you attach a personification to things that we can't explain, there could be sort of like entities in which we describe things, or the personal accounts that people have had with sort of entities or religious figures. There's so much to be said because everyone's had different experiences or has different views or has different belief systems. So I don't think there's any one way in which there is to believe. I think you just got to try and
maybe there isn't one way. There's many ways.
Maybe there are many ways. Yeah, I've always tried to try and keep an open mind and try and look at it from a place of love for one, standing for other people. Absolutely. And also for myself.
Respect.
Yeah, and in terms of resonating with a particular type, I think there's far more that I would like to learn about religion. About, like, growing up in the UK, it was more Christian based. Mm-hmm. Now living in London, I've had the pleasure and understanding to learn more about sort of Muslim. I've had the pleasure to sort of understand more about Hinduism and
about Islam.
Islam, yeah, exactly. And it's been such an eye opener. And I recently asked one of my staff members to give me the Quran, because I'd love to read it, and that's something that I really would just want to read, just to kind of open my own perspectives. And I think it's something that people should try and learn and understand, even if it might not necessarily be something that they believe in, because what it does is it tries to keep the mind open towards things like that. And maybe you find things that resonate with you, maybe you don't. So I think it's always it's always one of those experiences that will change. Maybe if you read up more on it, who knows? With death being uncertain, how do you find certainty in it? What's the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I don't really think about legacies. I hear people, especially famous people, when they talk about, I want to be remembered for this, I want to be remembered for that, for my achievements, and I really don't care, to be honest, about it. Like, it's just, I know 400 years from now, no one's gonna remember me. Not even after my kids going to remember me, if I'm gonna have any. My grandkids, going to know me, and then my grandkids, they probably going to know that I existed, but then their kids, they just they don't care about it.
Yeah,
they don't care about me. So I really don't care about any legacy. I think you asked me that question a long time ago on an episode, and as long as I raise good people, so they help them for other people, and as long as I'm true to myself and doing good for my loved ones and my friends, I'm fine. Like, I don't want to leave some sort of legacy behind me, because I don't really care about it, to be honest. I really don't. So as long as I'm leaving good people behind me is good enough for me.
Yeah, I think it's
what you're doing right now. Is not like, I don't know. It's just, I never thought about leaving something behind. What about you?
With death being uncertain, how do I find certainty? I think I always try and say that it can be taken away as quick as it was given. So I find certainty in that I'm going to try and not live every day like it's your last, because I think that's impossible. But try and live to a life that allows me to do as much as I can, that will give me the strength to say I comfortably live the life that I'm okay to leave behind. When I think about legacy, like leaving behind family that I could one day look at when I'm old, would be amazing. because I feel like for me personally, I would love the opportunity to be able to do that. But also at the same time, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You know,
Yeah,
it depends on the right person.
that's it,
Doesn't
man. Like,
define. Yeah, it doesn't define who I am fundamentally. It's funny because it's like leaving things behind. Maybe it'd be far easier for my grandkids to understand who I am just on the basis of like they could look back and look at this podcast.
No, absolutely. I'm not. Hey guys, your feedback is very important. And no, this is not an advertisement. Actually, what I'm asking from you is to leave a comment below what you liked and most importantly, what you disliked about this episode, because we can improve on the next episodes and we can make a better content for you to listen. Give us also a topics you'd like to us talking about, and we can prepare, do your research and talk about it on the next episodes. Thank you.
No.
I would love them
It's
to
an
do that,
interest. It's just an interesting thing because you couldn't have done that like 70 years ago.
Yeah, imagine that. Like they
imagine
could
if I
look
could see my great grandfather on a podcast and really like understand
when they were like in their 20s, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
Oh, that's crazy. I haven't thought about it.
Like it would be so like so kind of is also for them to sort of understand who I am and being able to sort of put this out, be able to put this kind of stuff out there. You never know. Like I think that's also me trying to just be authentically me in that respect. Or maybe there'll be some kind of way that you can download your brain onto a computer and they can look at everything.
Yeah.
Who knows?
They could even put that in their own brains and then experience everything you experience. And you know, like when they say you write a book.
Yeah.
And like you write a book in like 10 years, or like your experience, what you experienced in 10, 20 years, and you write that in like 5 years. So that's like a 25 years of experience in 400 pages, but then you read that in like a month, where you get all that access to the information in like a month. So that's the same. Imagine if like our grandkids, they could just put something in their heads and they could scan it in like an hour.
Well, yeah.
The whole experience that we like experience
like the Matrix. They
Yeah.
fucking download
Jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Oh, that would be so good.
That, like, who's to say that that's not possible? Like 100%. Like you could, you know, when you think about the brain being cognitively functioning that way, it's like a machine. It's like,
But I've seen they implanted the first Neuralink to human brain.
Really,
recently,
they have actually done that.
Yeah.
See, that to me is just crazy because it's the more you think about that, the more you kind of feel like you just taking away from the biological experience that is human.
100.
Like soon.
But when you look, we are kind of cyborgy right now because, like, you always use your phone. Like I use my glasses and we use our headphones. Like we can't live without certain things to like function
Without
properly.
Technology,
Yeah, like say for example, if we would compare two of us, you having your phone and I don't have my phone, but then someone asks someone asks questions and you can use your phone, but I don't really have access to it. But obviously you would answer a lot more questions because you simply have an access into the internet, right? And that kind of makes you like almost like a cyborg, because you have access to this little device, but when you put that in your brains and then you don't need to actually look for that info, you will just think about it and you're just going to know that stuff. And I think Elon Musk said that, and when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, he's kind of right, because we are so our lives are just related to technology so much right now that we can't even live without it now.
Yeah, it's like it's now
a part of us.
Like we can't even really live without Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
you can't experience this society. You can't live in this society.
Yeah.
So unless you understand Wi-Fi connection and how that works.
Well, even my mum, I'm trying to explain her how to like send her money or just little things like that everyone understands. And obviously she's 65 years old right now, and I can see how stressful for her it is, because she never like she didn't grow up with it, and for her, all of this is so new, and sometimes I get frustrated. Like, this is so simple to do. Like, why you don't understand it? But then I realize that our kids going to laugh at us probably when they're going to use AI as just like a daily tool. Not like maybe something else, but I hope I'm going to understand a lot more, because I don't want to become that granddad who doesn't know anything. But
Do you think that's like do you think it's like, do you think we need to evolve any more than where we're at now?
like technology wise,
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, like it depends. Like medicine wise, yeah,
Yeah.
why not? Like I'd love to find a cure to a cancer that like no one would really die from it anymore. Space exploration, I think that's beautiful and amazing, but every good has its bad, right? So with AI, I think we're going to achieve so many just mind blowing um, achievements and discoveries. We're going to find out so much about ourselves, and but at the same time, we'll have a downside for it. Like we spoke about porn addiction. I can imagine the impact is going to make on that industry, and the amount of misery is going to give to these young adults. So it's pendulum, right? Like there's some if there's something good, there's always going to be something bad about it as well.
Yeah, it's so true. I think sometimes I think we forget the implications
Yeah.
of creating a technology that could have its, downfall to society as well. I think when it gets to a point where we're no longer sort of biologically feeling, maybe that's maybe a step too far. At the end of the day, like, we are human, and that's like, to me, an amazing experience to be able to not have a human experience and live more for a technological experience. Like, I've never been the kind of person that could be on a computer all day just because I want to be a human, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you?
so,
I've got another question. Do you think it's inevitable? Like, because what you said is so. You enjoy feeling emotions and being human, but was interesting because if we look at the evolution side of things, so we evolved from monkeys, and then we are human now, and the next stage for us to become is this cyborg, half cyborg, half human entity. So do you think it's just part of evolution that's exactly where we're going, and it's just inevitable that
and that's how it's supposed to be.
yeah, like we don't live with monkeys anymore, and we simply took over all of the planet, and eventually that's what AI is gonna do to us, because that's not what evolution's supposed to do in the first place.
Do you think people will be happier with a more of a technological advancement to themselves? Because I think things are way more easier than they used to be. Obviously, like, we don't have to hunt for food, we don't have to hunt for sex, like all of these things. But we never,
for sex.
well, we don't have to look. For,
We do hunt sometimes, though.
But like, where we've made life easier for ourselves in all of those respects, do we find ourselves at a crossroads where humans aren't as happy? Do you think that if that is like your case is saying, where maybe that is a part of the human evolution, where all of a sudden we start turning into cyborgs, but
it's
making
not
our
human
lives
evolution, but just evolution in general. That's how it's supposed to be.
But like, making our lives easier in that respect, does that make us happier? Or do you think where we're at right now, where we kind of have some sort of human experience, like, do you think even though life was harder, do you think more people were happier? Do you think there were more people with depression? Do you think there were more people with, like, I don't know, I feel now we're at a time where even though we've made things easier, we've still got all these problems. Who's to say that there's not going to be even worse problems?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the more advanced that we get,
I guess it's just the curse of him improving, and
yeah, I just think
growing.
the more I think about the more we advance with technology and the more we take the human element out of life experience, the more do we become, are we going to become more sort of distant? Are we going to become more sort of divided in a way
Mm-hmm.
where, I don't know, it's that's the scary thought, I think, for me, is the more the more we sort of elevate ourselves into a civilization that's tech based and not so much kind of human based, are we sort of leading ourselves for an experience that's not kind of what we were originally, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is why I kind of find that whole sort of, and I know we're going to be talking about this in another podcast, but that sort of ancestral living,
Mm-hmm.
where now there's been a bit of a movement towards kind of taking things back to how our ancestors lived, and people are, you know, you get some people that kind of want to live outside and live within nature, and
Yeah.
you know, you look at films like Avatar, and people are really sort of emotionally in awe of that kind of film because you see a civilization that's totally
In accordance with nature.
totally in accordance with nature. They're not, and then you see this kind of advanced civilization that's sort of tech based, that's sort of, you know, fighting with robots, and you know,
Well, that's what Graham Hancock talks about. That previous civilizations, they used to be in accordance with nature so
yeah,
much that they never really used any. They were very advanced within themselves,
yeah,
like exploration within themselves.
and I just think that that's a really interesting combat to the argument of, you know, when I think about sort of enjoying this life and sort of thinking about that life coming to an end, I feel like we kind of already putting limitations on ourselves by having to rely on technology when we're sort of not using our full potential just as human organisms to.
Yeah, but look, like when you think about it, I'm talking about evolution side of things, and when you look at like if we evolved from monkeys, like they never they didn't wear a suit and was going to work,
So
innit? Like
some monkeys wear suits for sure. There are some
yeah,
monkeys
but
out
like
there.
they were just living in tribes and just hunter gathering, right?
Yeah,
But now like we wear clothes and we live in these big cities and have a job and have our interests, and this is so far away from what we used to be. And I think where where we are right now and where we're heading to is going to be so far completely from what we're doing that is just a part of the growth, I guess. But I understand what you're saying, that is this a good thing? Maybe it's not a good thing for us, but that's inevitable. That's
mm.
evolution, and yeah, it's just part of life,
Mm.
part of the cycle.
Do you think, in regards to going back to sort of death, do you think it's a celebration or do you think it's something more to be mourned?
How do you mean by that?
Like, if you think about your life, do you think death is a sad thing, or do you think it's something that should be celebrated?
Mm. Um. Well, I don't. I don't really know. That's the thing, because if 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 there is life after death, then yeah, I think it has to be a celebrated, because it's something you're going to experience a completely different something completely different, and maybe this is just like a warm up, like a test for what's going to happen afterwards. But if it's just going to happen that as soon as you die, lights off and you're sleeping for eternity, then I guess yeah, it would be. It, I would just say it was a good ride, but it's quite sad that it ended the
Mm.
way it ended, because he's. I mean,
So like,
experiencing this is amazing, man.
yeah, like, would you say that because we don't know what happens after this, that therefore we shouldn't celebrate? Like,
I see what I mean.
yeah,
I think we should be grateful for what we experienced, and but it shouldn't be like, oh, I'm excited. So for what's next? Because there's nothing.
yeah, there's nothing guaranteed.
Yeah. But if there's something after that, yeah, then it would be really fascinating.
Mm. Have you ever had a profound experience in your life that's made you sort of like, I suppose, like a near-death experience, but like an experience that where you kind of were in a position where you sort of had a bit more of an understanding towards death? Have you ever had like?
No, not really. But is as we started to talk, a memory just popped in my head. When I was a kid, I remember it was the first time when I realized that I'm gonna get old. Like understood that the kid that I am right now, like I'm going to grow up eventually, and I'm going to be old, and I'm going to die. And the way I realized it, because I was talking with my mom and my brother and my family, and they're like, "Yeah, we were like you," and because I was seeing the pictures, and like, "Yeah, we were like a little like you," and now we grew up, and then I used to obviously see older people, and they're like, and then I clocked that, oh, so they used to be like me, and then they became like my mom, my brother, and now they like old. And then I clocked that this is going to be me in like 60 or 70 years. And I was a kid. I was probably 6 years old, maybe, or something. Like a very small child. And I remember that blew my mind. I was like, oh, like I can't even imagine how I am going to be when I'm going to be older. So that was one of those profound experiences when I was just a kid. For some reason, I thought about it, and
Like you knew you were going to grow up, you knew that you were going to get old, and you knew you were going to die.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was the first time I realized that this is going to happen, regardless.
Mm.
Um, but I never really had any near-death experiences. One, well, I think I almost died once, but but I didn't see a tunnel. Sorry, a light at the end of the tunnel or anything like that, like a lot of people would see. But I remember my brother and we went to this lake to swim, and at that time I didn't know how to swim, but I was just following him, and he swam like far away from the shore, and I was trying to swim, like I was just walking, um, like walking slash swimming, you could call it, because I didn't know how to swim properly, and then suddenly I just realized that I can't touch the ground, like the yeah, and yeah, I just panicked, and I remember I started to drown, and by the end of just before the I went I blacked out. I remember I was seeing this man running towards me from the shore, and then I just got up at the shore. Like he yeah, he just how's it called? Um, not survived.
Rescued.
He rescued me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that was, I remember I had that bad headache the whole day, because but that was the one that, yeah, I was very close
Freaked
to.
you out.
And that's the thing, that that day, only that man with his wife was at the shore. There was no one else
Wow. So you think
there.
potentially if he wasn't there, it would have been
He wasn't there, I would 100% would have drowned.
really?
100%, because I was drowning. Like
Oh, really?
I
That
remember,
bad?
I tried to shout like help,
Oh
but I
shit.
couldn't, because my lungs were full of water, I think. So I was like, help, and then I just blacked out. And I remember I got up and on the shore. My bro was like so angry. He was like, "Why the fuck are you following me?" I was kidding it. So, but yeah, that was the only time that was so close to.
Mm.
I know you have a story,
Yeah.
Vietnam.
Well, just quickly with that, they say that when your life flashes before your eyes, there's no telling of how long that time is. So therefore, let's say it's the pace of which your actual life is. So you could be having the moment that your life is flashing before your eyes right now, but
Mm-hmm.
because there's no perception of time, you could be dying right now, but you're just living that period of your life right now.
Bro.
You know what I mean? Because there's nothing to say how long that period of time is when your life flashes before your eyes.
Yeah.
So I could be in that moment of where I'm dying right now, but I'm just living that life before your eyes moment, because there's no
Yeah.
saying of how long that thing is.
Have you ever heard Ari Shafir on Joe Rogan
No.
when he did Salvia, and he made like that's crazy. So he smoked some salvia,
Yeah.
and it's like a very strong psychedelic drug. It's like weed, but way stronger than that. And apparently he smoked it, and like he passed out for like 12 minutes. But then when he got up, he freaked out because then he was talking about his experience, and he said, "Man, like as soon as I smoked it, I lived underwater with these people. Like I lived there for like 6 months." Like
Oh yeah, I
I had
think
a
I saw.
wife, I had
Yeah.
a kid, I had a job, I
Yeah.
had friends. And
Yeah.
when he got up, it's like the fuck, like he was so confused. And then they gave him some water to drink. And when he drank it, like he spit it out because he thought it's used for breathing. It's mad. It's crazy, man.
Yeah. It's
I remember it blew my mind as well. I was like, this is mad. Like imagine if this is true, man.
who's to say? Like who's there's no logical explanation that's fully been explained. You know, at this point, maybe who's to say that we figure that question out? The more that we go inside ourselves or outside there, but yeah, like I had an experience where I felt like I almost sort of took that ticket to
Mm.
to a different realm, and it was terrifying. So I think it was more just my body reacting in a survival mode, but I didn't have like this feeling of where my life was flashing before my eyes and I thought that this was it. It was just a state of complete panic shock. And if I'd not been more, if had I not been as reactive as I was, I think it would have resulted in the same thing as drowning. But
Can you share
yeah, for sure.
briefly that?
So I was in Vietnam. Did I already? Have I said this before? I was when I was in
Well, I've
Vietnam.
heard that a couple of times, brother.
I was in like Vietnam and we went on this like kind of pub crawl thing and everyone was like drinking and getting on it and like doing fucking shotguns and everything and I'm not a big drinker, I'm not a heavy drinker, I'm not very good at it, but I could hold my own and I was definitely like mixing and stuff like that and
I've never heard a person say I'm not good at drinking.
I'm terrible. Like 4 beers and I'm like on my way. For sure. Always. And yeah, like I can't remember how many beers in, but it was still quite fairly early on. And at the back of this bar was like a ledge that you could sit on and smoke a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out and I smoked a cigarette, but there was off the back of that wall was like a drop, and that drop went into like a running stream essentially.
That goes from the toilet, innit?
It was like a sewer line essentially. Like at least that's kind of what it smelled like or sort of looked like. And I remember walking out of this bar, but I remember the next thing I remember was I was in this stream being like disorientated, like scratching for stuff, trying to feel my thing.
Because it was pitch black, right?
Yeah. And there's no lights, no street lights, no anything. And I managed to like stop myself and look up and I was like, oh, fuck, where am I? And I had to like try and climb out of this thing. I was fucking traumatized and so I was like, fuck, I'm gonna die, I have no idea where I am. I was like screaming for help, no one was there, it was pitch black, like it was like the whole thing had just shut down, like no one was there. And I was like, how long was I out? And it was a terrifying experience because at that point I didn't even know if I was knocked out or whatever had happened, but lost my phone, my wallet, so climbed my way out of this like thing. I remember, I think I even cried at one point. I took all my clothes off, and I had no idea where I was because I was just in the middle of some random town in Vietnam. And this was like 18 years of age, and I was like, I don't even know where my hotel is.
Oh,
This is like, I wasn't before. I didn't even have an iPhone. This was like, me and Charlie had an iPad that we shared. Before that, it was just like a standard, like actual button phone,
yeah.
like a BlackBerry or something. And so I remember, I think the hotel was that way. So I was running,
But naked, innit?
butt naked. And I thought I was going to die in that situation because I thought I'm just like one crazy person away from like get rid of this fucking white tourist kind of guy. I think like maybe 45 minutes into this run, I found my hotel, and the receptionist, I don't know what time this was, but I like was knocking on the glass door, not even realizing how naked I was, and she was like screaming, being like, "Oh my god, like what's going on? Are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital?" And I was like, "Just need to go to my room. Which room am I staying in?" Went to my room. My room door was open, and I was like, "Fuck, my door's open." And like Charlie was there, passed out. And there was like vomit everywhere.
Oh no.
And I was like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?" Generally thought in that experience I was gonna die for some reason. But when I going back to that sort of waking up moment, I didn't even know if at that point I'd already had died. Like it was just crazy. Like I didn't know if I hit my head. I didn't know if anything was broken.
That's crazy.
That's
finding yourself whilst traveling, innit?
bro, it's crazy. But climbing out of this wall, I like cut myself because there was all these bubbles there. I thought I was gonna get infected. It was a whole thing.
Crazy.
And then the next day, Charlie was like, "That was so like inconsiderate of you. Like, what if anything had happened to you? What would that phone call be like if I had to call mum?" And I was like,
"Oh man."
"Yeah, it was bad. It was bad." But I remember saying to myself, being like, "I'm never going to get that out of control," because I think I was just drinking to the point. I drank to the point where I just didn't know where I was, and that's dangerous. Like,
Yeah.
to be that out of consciousness to even know where you are, like so irresponsible.
Man, that's crazy.
You know, that's how deaths happen. Like you can kind of see when you hear about people dying because of like stupid over stupid stuff and alcohol incidents, you're like, I can see why. Like, you know, when you're not even sort of cognitively in control of yourself, it's bad.
Do you think because they say that when you die your brain releases DMT?
Yeah, I've heard
every
this.
one of us have DMT in our brains, and as soon as we die, they say that we release it. Do you think that we experience a similar experience whilst being on DMT?
I think when you go into these kind of experiences on DMT, you it's a very quick, rapid change in your experience. And yeah, I think there's been accounts of like when my mum was with my grandmother on her like deathbed, she was in and out of consciousness the whole time. And
in and out of consciousness.
Well, like, you know, she was asleep and then she's awake, and then this was like the last days. And then on the last day, I think the nurse just came in and just pumped her full of like morphine, and because she was like trying to hang on, you know. But my mum said that she was kind of recalling weird things. So she was like being like, "Wow, look at that beautiful shape," to "Who's that person over there?" to, you know. And I sort of was like, maybe she's having this kind of relation with her pineal gland just sort of secreting DMT that's making it easier for her to, I mean, there's nothing to say, there's no like hardcore evidence to say that that's exactly what happens. But as I was like sort of looking at that hypothesis of that's what the brain's doing, and the experience that my mum was telling me that she was having, where she was sort of like, you know, wow, look at that, to being back in reality, to then sort of there was definitely this sort of relation to what she was seeing wasn't there because she was in her room, but she was experiencing something. And I sort of believe that maybe that is the case with the brain. The brain is, you know, I don't know if it's trying to make things easier or if it's just trying to get to grips with what the reality is. The brain shutting down. I don't know the science behind it as to exactly what it is that you see as your body shutting down. But she was coming up with some stuff, I think, yeah.
For people who doesn't know what is DMT, so a lot of people say that there is a bridge between spiritual and physical world, essentially, and a bridge between life and death. And DMT is dimethyltryptamine. Yeah, the spirit molecule is a very strong psychedelic found in a number of animals, plants, and humans. So, yeah, it's very, very fascinating that you can find it even in plants and
it's everything
in animals as well. So I researched a bit on the DMT stuff, and so I'm just gonna read a bit. Dr. Ed Freshka, I hope I pronounced her name right. Who spoke about how DMT has been found to bind to the stigma 1 receptor, which is found throughout the body. This receptor plays a key role in protecting cells from dying when oxygen is low, making room for the argument that DMT may be indeed released in large quantities during death in a last gasp attempt to keep ourselves alive. Extrapolating from this finding, one might be tempted to hypothesize that the sudden flood of DMT may provoke the mystical encounters on the border between life and death that are often reported by those who die and are revived. So people who have heart attacks and they are revived, they kind of talk about that they met Jesus, or a lot of them see light at the end of the tunnel. And like your grandma been seeing these entities, so yeah, it has to be something with it, I guess, but you never know if you're just hallucinating or this is something legit.
Yeah, it's I mean, who's to say that you're not hallucinating now, right? Like
exactly,
there's no,
like when you're dreaming, you don't really know that you're dreaming, right?
Yeah, and who's to say that this isn't the dream and that's the reality?
Exactly.
And I just find all of that so interesting because it just builds a further case as to trying to understand what all of this is. And I know this is all just theories and hypotheses.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what.
But that's the beauty.
That's the
right?
beauty, and that's the beauty of trying to understand all of these kind of interesting topics, because it allows conversations like this to happen. And for me, I find comfort in trying to understand things in many different ways as possible. Like, would I like to do I find comfort in maybe understanding that there might be something after this realm? Yeah. Is that something that I believe? I don't know yet because I haven't had that experience. But I think that there's something to be said for when having these experiences and the relationship that you have with death after those experiences changes. I can recall having experiences on mushrooms and DMT, and that completely changed the way I look at death before I had those experiences, for sure. And not to say that that's something that people have to do, but that's something for me that, having had those realizations and looking at things differently, I was like, whoa, you know, maybe there are different levels to
of reality
that isn't just physical but a spiritual plane. And that's just something that I've had because that's an experience that I've had. Like, I can only go off on the experiences that I've had, and whether that's right or wrong, that's not up to you, but those are the experiences that I've personally seen. So therefore I'm only going to go off of what I've personally seen.
Exactly, of your beliefs, right?
Yeah, right. So yeah, that's just something that I've kind of come to terms with more, and something that I'm still exploring. Like, I still have a very big journey in sort of understanding that through sort of medicines, and I'm sort of slowly more tapping into that realm of understanding of things. And I hope that it's sort of, I'm sure that maybe 10 years down the line, I'll be able to share my experiences, or as this podcast grows, you'll see me having more of, who knows, but I know that my journey's starting now with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just to conclude and summarize the podcast is, I guess no matter if you believe in life after death, such as heaven or reincarnation or simulation theory, I guess we all have different experiences and different beliefs, and no one knows what happens. So it's all about, we can philosophize about it, but
Yeah.
we're going to know when the time is right. So
Yeah. Secret question.
yeah.
I know that's we kind of have said this, but when it comes to death, what are you most afraid of?
Like, what I'm most afraid about, and like what happens in this life, or
Yeah, just when it comes to,
I mean, I said that like I would be afraid to realize that I haven't done what, like I didn't know what I'm doing.
yeah,
But I'm going to answer this in a different way. So if I wouldn't, like, just before dying, if I would realize that all of this was just not a real experience, let's just say, maybe an artificial experience for someone's entertainment, I would say that would be really sad, because it feels like I invested, and that maybe sound a bit selfish because it's all about me, right? Like, oh, I invested this so much in this, but I experienced so much, and I experienced love and hate and happiness and sadness and all of this just for someone's entertainment, like simulation, right? That would be a bit sad. So I would be quite afraid that is
the case. Yeah.
But again, you never know. So I guess whenever we'll die, we'll know.
We'll find out.
Secret question as well. If you would have a secret pill, so when you take it, you know what happens after you die. Would you take it? Think about how it would influence the life that you're living right now.
Yeah, I would 100% take it.
You would take it?
Yeah. 100%.
Raw. I didn't expect that.
Dude, without water, I would swallow that pill.
With that Vietnamese water.
Dry dog that pill.
Why would you take it?
Because I think it would allow me to sort of have a bit more of a peace of mind.
Yeah?
Yeah. I wouldn't like knowing how I would die, or knowing what happens after.
No, what happens after you die?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right.
Because I think it would allow me to live this life with more meaning. Yeah.
Fair.
Would you? You wouldn't?
Well, now that you said so confidently, maybe I would take it, because I thought you're going to think about, like, would I take it, would I not? Now that you said it so easy, maybe I would take it. Yeah. Yeah, it would. Yeah, definitely.
I'll bite it in half. We can share it. We can.
Yeah, go for it.
Weird experience.
Yeah.
Cool. That wraps up the podcast. Please let us know what you think about this episode. If you've got this far, then thank you for listening this far. Please comment down below if you have a topic that you would like us to talk about. And as always, like, share, comment. See us at Triangle Theory. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you in the next one.